One of my favorite things to do this time of year is Kane really shines when he gets to bring all his potions out. And I am looking, one day we're going to have a camera on him if he allows it. We're going to have a camera on him because he has the bougiest looking warmer that I have ever seen. Like, it makes my little warmer look like, I don't know, like the Great Value warmer. I mean, it's like gold and it has a fancy
It's a wonderful
lid.
gift.
And it's just sitting there, just sitting over there, and it's burning heating.
Yes, warming.
Warming, sorry, is a warmer, frankincense.
Heating. It's fine.
Now, he got into this, and we like to talk about, especially, the birth of our Lord and Savior, the gifts that were given to baby Jesus from the wise men, as the Beach Boys were just telling you about coming in with, We Three Kings. And the weirdest thing about this is the frankincense that you have going in your bougie warmer. I have nothing in my olfactory library that I can compare this to. Right. It is so different.
Yeah, it's uniquely
Jesus
clean.
had this.
Yeah, very clean, unique smell.
So, yeah, I mean, and it's like was very expensive back in them days, back in the days of yore. So Kane got into this from a good friend of his, who we affectionately refer to, but I really do think it should be his actual title, Certified Potions Master. And John Launius, who does Shihan Wellness, and he's the founder. He does a lot of really good stuff for our veterans as well. He's the director of community outreach for the Special Operations Charity Network. And one of the cool things that they're doing as well, because he assists veterans that deal with PTSD, and he looks for ways to help alleviate their PTSD symptoms and support a network that gets them back to feeling good and feeling at peace. And so part of that network is Spec Ops water, which is not just your sissy water. This is the water that if you have muscles, you drink this water. All the other water is sissy water. But it's called Spec Ops water. Hydration is the mission, and it supports veterans. So, when you drink it, make sure the skull's out, which I love how it automatically is. You don't have to just advertising it. But he joins us now. John joins us now, and he's so great. He gives us some of his time every year, and he joins us now. John, always so good to see you. Merry Christmas. I appreciate, because I understand that I have you to thank for Kane's super fancy warmer over here.
Well, absolutely. Dana, wonderful to see you again. A lot has gone on in the past year. When we last met, we were talking about orbs. We were talking about lights in the sky. Yes. I mean, so much has gone on.
Three-Eye Atlas.
Let's bring it. Yeah, right. But we may come back to that, because obviously the lights in the sky go well with the season. But let's bring it down to earth, one might say, talking about frankincense. So when you were talking about frankincense there a moment ago, talking about how there is nothing in your scent library around that's absolutely true. In the same way that we are now living in a culture that is riddled with synthetics. We're talking synthetic medication. We're talking, all this, call it big pharma, call it what you want, is that the pendulum is swinging backwards to actually bring back some of these remedies that we've been using as a human species for thousands of years. When you talk about frankincense, for example, when we talk about the Song of Solomon 3:6, one of the lines from that literally is, who is it that comes perfumed with myrrh and frankincense? When you talk about they gave him wine to drink mixed with myrrh, with Gospel of Mark 15:23. We're talking about fragrances that are biblical, but that are completely applicable today. It is not an accident that every religion and every culture has had incense. And so when you talk about the work that I'm doing with the Special Operations Charity Network, the work that I'm doing at Lifetime Media as an executive, bringing, media to these things that we're doing, really showing this across the world, we're taking our veterans and our active military and our first responders and putting them back where they need to be, which is centered so that they can make an even bigger difference for people.
Yeah, that's such a great point. For those just joining, we're talking with our friend John Launius, Shihan Wellness, and he does a lot of stuff with PTSD veterans and helping to kind of like rehabilitate them to get them back living their best lives. One of the things that Ken and I were talking about on break as well I have friends who have been involved in lobbying for psychedelics in terms of therapies for veterans, which I really wish members of Congress would pay attention to. It's not like people going out and doing drugs and getting high. It's not that at all. It's literally about rewiring your brain. And to that point, I was telling Kane that I'm going to bring the tugboat to shore. If I smelled Bath and Body Works is, what is it? What did I say? The cucumber. I'm immediately transported back to 8th grade. Boom. I'm in my bedroom. I'm in 8th grade. I've got, Sinead O'Connor on the radio, Q 106. I'm like, hearing, all of this. I've got less air in at night. I'm, smelling the Bath and Body Works. I am immediately transported to that time. I can almost see it just from the scent of it. And like my girlfriends and I joke all the time, like, oh my gosh, like some of the old, Target perfume that we would smell, you're immediately transported back to that time. Similar to those therapies. And that makes so much sense in the world. Talk to me about that.
Yeah, so we're talking about the limbic system. So the limbic system is our seat of memories and emotions. And if you haven't figured it out, we're all emotional beings. And so, that drives everything that we're doing. So let's get very specific about how I use the limbic system, especially with our veterans and our active military. I am now actively working with different teams and different groups. Some of this I can't talk about, but this is all through the Special Operations Charity Network. But we already know that our SOF operators, our Special Operation Forces, are learning how to box breathe. They're using these what might seem woo-woo type things, but it's really, but it works, absolutely. So, for me, what I talk about a lot is that for 30 years, I've been taking people from the woo-woo to the wow-wow. And what I mean by that is that when you first get access to some of this, you're like, oh, you're an incense master. What, that must be woo-woo. Well, no, if you suddenly find yourself centered, if, people that have migraines, I disappear their migraines in moments with this stuff that I do. But let's take specifically someone with PTSD, and it can be a veteran, it can be someone in business. But the minute that you've got PTSD, you've got that moment where when something comes up, it triggers you, it sends you out of your regulation. Well, if I'm able to take you to a place before the trauma, and if you grew up on a farm, there are a myriad of fragrances that you associate with that would take you back to, for example, your high school days with Les Aaron and the music and everything in your room, and that actually transports your mind to a different time in your experience where you can then start to feel safe, you feel centered, and then you can start the path to healing. In my hypnosis work, for example, I talk about how the more relaxed you are, the deeper the healing. So we are looking at getting very, very relaxed. So if we're looking specifically at frankincense, and I'm talking Boswellia sacra, for example, there are 19 different varieties of frankincense and 2 in contention. But Boswellia sacra is probably the one you have in the studio, and it's considered the best in the sense it has the highest amount of apinine, which is a terpene shown to modulate the limbic system and support emotional regulation.
This is like super scientific.
Yeah, but here's the thing. I live in the Midwest, but I work all over the world. And so I have to balance both the scientific aspect of it, the philosophical aspect, the historical aspect. And I think that's what gives me credibility, because I'm not walking into the room necessarily floating wearing white robes, right? But it's literally, if you want to have a conversation about the history of Christian incense, I can absolutely do that. If you want to have a conversation about Buddhist incense, all of that. Again, all of this is from the divine. All of this is from the creator. And it's not an accident that baby Jesus was given frankincense and myrrh. Frankincense on one level means Jesus is the King of Kings. And so by using these things, by regulating our bodies and our minds to be the best and most optimal way that we can operate, this is the crux of this. And this is what I'm doing through the Special Operations Charity Network. You mentioned Spec Ops Water. They give 25 cents a can to what we do. And so that's huge. It's not a percentage. It's not like, oh, we promise at the end of the year. No, every single can that they sell, they give SOCN, Special Operations Charity Network, 25 cents. And that gets me where I need to be in the world to be able to take people on these experiences that you cannot explain. I can talk about it, but it's like going to the moon and talking about going to the moon. When you're on the moon, it's a completely different experience.
And I love that it's not in plastic either. I love that. That's my favorite thing.
Yeah, absolutely.
You were the one who told me last year the symbolism of giving myrrh, because it was a spice or spice that's used for like anointing and embalming, and that was kind of like foreshadowing, with baby Jesus and the wise men giving him myrrh, which I did not realize that the history of myrrh. I mean, I know this, I know the story of Jesus in and out, and I'm like, myrrh, that actually is like every aspect of that story is about foreshadowing. That's brilliant. But I didn't even know that about myrrh. I just, I'm like, wait, there's myrrh. I'm, kind of, jokingly refer to it like that. That's significant because you got into the frankincense and the divinity of Jesus, and then gold, the symbol of wealth and status as king. But I didn't realize myrrh was used in that way. Let me ask you this. What is, in your experience, the most, like if Cain was going to warm something, what is the most powerful thing, spice or how you would describe it, to warm that has like the biggest impact in the brain that you've seen in your work?
Yeah. So let's take a passage, or let's take a moment from the Bible. So in the Bible, they will oftentimes talk about aloe, and some people think it's like the aloe plant.
Yeah.
Not at all. So what we are talking about, so there is a wood from a tree called agrolaria, and agrolaria, in some of the more apocryphal texts, Adam and Eve were allowed to take this fragrance from the Garden of Eden. Actually, their garments smelled like this particular tree. And if you've ever, seen the play Joseph and the Technicolor Dreamcoat, it's actually based on that. And so Adam and Eve were allowed to take certain fragrances or clothes from the Garden of Eden that actually smelled like the Garden of Eden. And what this is a plant called agrolaria. And quite literally, it produces the mental clarity of a 30-minute meditation in a single inhalation. And so imagine if you literally had the mind of a 30-minute meditation in a single inhalation, then you can commune with the divinity that is always all around us. And this, it's that powerful, but Dana, here's the thing. The really, really high quality stuff, not the stuff that people say they're selling on the internet, what I'm able to get and source costs anywhere between $1,500 and $3,500 a gram. That is a paperclip. But then you understand why the samurai, across their 800 to 950 year history, depending on who you ask, they were using these fragrances before they would go into battle. And about 300 years into the samurai tradition, they figured out that we cannot just take our elite fighting forces and drive them into the ground and burn them out and send them into battle. We have to bring them back and regulate them. So that's where you got things like tea ceremony, incense ceremony, flower arranging, so you could balance that out. Fast forward to the age we're in now, this is the essence, the being of what I'm doing with our elite fighting force through the Special Operations Charity Network and through all of our partners. Yesterday at the White House, when President Trump was signing, the reclassification of marijuana, 3 of my partners were standing right behind Trump. And so this is beginning to seep out into places very powerfully. And so I'm so grateful to you and your show for allowing me to come on and talk a little bit about this, because it's so outside of some people's orbits.
It's fascinating. It's absolutely fascinating. And not to interrupt you, but it's less carcinogenic than if you're going to burn a candle that you get in the store. There's no carcinogens in this.
There is, because what I do, there is no smoke. It's pure fragrance. And so when you get, you and I both are essentially in media, and we've met people that have a lot of smoke and mirrors around them. You know what I mean? And so when you're able to get rid of that and just be who you are and be the essence of what you are, under everything, all we want to do is be loved and appreciated for who we are. Nothing more, nothing less. And so if you've gone into the military and you've had to do things that on one level at first glance, create a cognitive dissonance, you by doing these types of fragrances, therapies.
Yeah.
I just called it fragrances. That's really funny.
It
I think
works,
I just
though.
invented.
It works,
I
but it
think I
makes
just invented a
sense.
new word.
It makes sense.
It's this is where we begin. And so again, grateful to you for this platform to be able to speak about it.
Well, thank you so much for what you do and being like, and explaining it so well. Because, I mean, when you read it, you're like, oh my gosh, this is, but you explain it incredibly well. John Launius, Shihan Wellness on Instagram. Make sure you check out specopscharity.com and also Spec Ops water in the can. I mean, this is the water for patriots right here. Get all the details on the website. John, so good to see you. Merry Christmas, my friend. Thank you so much for sharing your expertise with us. And now the studio smells amazing. And I feel like we're all real chill. I was real wired. Now I'm like, real chill. Just, appreciate you. Thank you so much. We'll talk again soon. God bless you.
Merry Christmas. Thank you. Okay, bye-bye. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.